Good morning and welcome to Digital Services Act Game Changer for Online Services and Citizens event. This event is organized by the Confederation of the Czech Industry and the Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Czech Republic, and in close cooperation with the permanent representation of the Czech Republic to the EU. My name is Milena Jaburková. I'm the Vice President of Confederation of Czech Industry, and I'm responsible for digital economy and education, and I will be hosting today's event. Before I pass the word to my dear friend Jaroslav Zajíček, Ambassador, Deputy Permanent Representative of the Czech Republic to the EU, and he is involved in Coreper 1. I would like to say a few short remarks on behalf of the Confederation of Czech Industry. There is no surprise if I say that we consider the Digital Services Act as one of the important and key pieces of the legislation in the field of digital economy. And therefore, there is also no surprise that it's one of our top priorities for the upcoming period, and we've been already actively participating in the national and European discussion, and we plan to continue to do so. As the representative of the Czech business, we understand the European Commission's initiative to propose update of the very old e-commerce directive in the form of Digital Services Act. And we would like to, because there is a need to clarify the role of online platform. We agree with the Commission that there is a space for updating the rules for the internet. And we want to be, as I said, an active partner in this discussion. Nevertheless, there are no easy fixes. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. We need to keep in mind that poorly drafted legislation could undermine effective principles of e-commerce directive. And without those principles, countless opportunities of digital economy will be lost. And also, we have to be very careful what we do within the context of today's pandemics, because as we see, digital tools and digital technologies proves how they are important for functioning of our economy. We are convinced that we need to keep the core principles of e-commerce, which proved well functioning, and we believe that they can functioning well in the future, which is country of origin principle, limited and reasonable liability regime, as well as the prohibition of general monitoring obligation. So that we think should be kept in the new regulatory framework to ensure that the EU digital economy can grow and scale. I would like to thank both the Ministry of Industry and Trade and the permanent representation of the Czech Republic to the EU for their facilitation of the broad discussion and involving all the relevant partners in this debate. This is good examples for anyone involved in legislation preparation. And I would like to thank very much to them again, and I'm looking forward to today's discussion. So let me now stop talking and welcome Mr. Jaroslav Zajíček, Deputy Permanent Representative of the Czech Republic to the EU and Ambassador in Coreper 1. And please, Jaroslav, I think that you are doing great. And can you share with us opening remarks? The floor is yours, Jaroslav.
Thank you very much, Milena, and first of all, thank you for the excellent job that you have been doing for the Confederation of Industry of the Czech Republic, but also for the whole of Czechia. And thanks also to both Confederation and MIT for organizing this with our modest help here from Brussels. And to start with, I can only say that I 100% agree with what you already said. So good morning, everyone, colleagues, friends, distinguished speakers. Allow me to also welcome you warmly at today's event on the upcoming Digital Services Act. I wish I was able to say welcome to the premises of the permanent representation of the Czech Republic to the EU, but as you know, 2020 has been rather harsh on us and showing no mercy so far. So we have to use all the digital tools available to try to get the messages across and have an excellent debate. Actually, yesterday evening, I was contemplating on how to underline the importance of the moment. And I cannot start with any different than mentioning a famous Hungarian name, but not the one probably you're thinking of right now. The name is Mihály Csikszentmihalyi. Some of you may never heard of him, and almost none of us, certainly not me, will ever be able to pronounce his name correctly, but born in 1934 to a family of a Hungarian diplomat and later ambassador of Hungary to Italy, he emigrated to the United States at the age of 22 in the aftermath of failed uprising against Soviet-imposed oppression. He was working nights to support himself while studying, and it paid off. Why? After becoming a distinguished professor of psychology, Csikszentmihalyi recognized and named the psychological concept of flow, a highly focused mental state conducive to productivity, a degree of concentration or even complete absorption with the activity at hand in which athletes, racing drivers, or musicians deliver their peak performance. In his own words, the ego falls away, time flies, every action, movement, and thoughts follow inevitably from the previous one, like playing jazz. Your whole being is involved, and you're using your skills to the utmost. Now, whether you're running a 100-meter sprint, entering a chicane at a deadly speed, or performing Dvořák's nines from the New World, your brain puts aside mundane thoughts and even notions of time, and to enable it to function at astonishing levels. This is nowadays best described as being in the zone. This is important. And I was often thinking whether this gifted experience occurs also within the Brussels bubble. In the world of Commission officials, member states, diplomats, honorable MEPs, as well as stakeholder representatives, in a place which is often stereotyped as a factory for regulation. As I was given a chance to observe our natural habitat from multiple of angles, I can tell you it depends. Sometimes a routine tends to prevail, dossiers keep coming and going, whatever legal puzzle emerges, we collectively try to find a piece that clicks. And no matter the gap between opinions, a quality European compromise promises to bridge them all. But from time to time, this business as usual attitude is rolled over by something much bigger. For instance, when a revision of the cornerstone of the European digital economy is about to happen. The force is strong with this one, as Darth Vader would put it. But indeed, the e-commerce directive proved to be a very rewarding foundation of cross-border provision of digital services. But 20 years is a more than a venerable age for any legislation in a rapidly developing field. An update is needed, no doubt, and as well, we all sense the gravity of the moment. Our brains start switching to the most efficient setting. The levels of our concentration will soon resemble those of athletes or artists, whichever is to your liking. The initiative, once confirmed by the Commission, has already got a lot of traction, I can confirm. We all have heard or read hundreds of opinions on what should be the overarching goal, what aspects to focus on, and how precisely to achieve the desired outcomes. Given the impressive number of these inputs, it was pleasing to discern a strong convergence. Most notably, almost everyone agreed that the core principles of the e-commerce directive should be kept in. I fully agree to that. If you truly care about the single market, and this is what I also posted yesterday on Twitter, the country of origin principle is about as obvious an answer as water being wet and fire being hot. Some principles, on the other hand, are not an open and shut case, as they might require a slight clarification. A good example is the liability regime, where we need to figure out what type of knowledge triggers responsibility and how to encourage innovation, including deployment of state-of-the-art tech. I hope our debate today will help with unfolding the map and having a closer look at some of the spots. Being only a scene setter today, I banned myself from diving deep into the content, and believe me, for a Coreper 1 ambassador, this is quite a challenge. Though I can hardly resist the temptation of at least touching the surface and sharing a few general remarks. And since all my favorite Christmas tales follow the rule of three, I have three rather embracive pieces of advice to anyone who happens to be in the loop. First, keep it a compact, horizontal enabler of single market of digital. This is the primary focus. Some see the DSA as sort of a superhero regulation that saves the online world by resolving every single issue out there. But coming down to earth, we should admit that it is not manageable. Second, don't be afraid of grabbing this opportunity. We have a chance to step up the level of harmonization and thereby deepen the single market for digital. Third, be mindful of SMEs and let proportionality to guide your steps. We all want a safe environment for consumers where diverse digital services grow and flourish, but putting too much on shoulders of the smaller ones could hamper the aim. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being my listening ear. Before giving the floor back to the host of today's event, I dare to pose a small yet important question to our speakers. Are you in the zone already? I wish you a successful webinar, hopefully, and next time I hope and I'm sure that it's going to be a fully fledged seminar again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jaroslav. Thank you, Ambassador, for excellent remarks and top to the point. And I'd like to welcome another friend, dear friend, which is Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry of the Czech Republic, Petr Očko. I already thanked Ministry and your involvement, Petr, in the debate on key digital issues, also at EU level, and thanks for leading in this. And please tell us what you have to say to DSA main principles.
Yes. So good morning. Thank you very much for introduction, and many nice words. It's my great pleasure to be here at the beginning of this online conference on DSA, and congratulations to especially to Confederation of Industry of the Czech Republic for a great organization, and we are very happy that we are part of or we are cooperating partner in organization, and I'm very happy that also we have a close cooperation with our permanent representation and many others, and I'm also very happy that there is a lot of attendees at this online conference from many member states. So congratulations again, and I'm very happy that also this international European conference is part of our long-term debates on digital regulation in the EU. We try as a ministry. We try to be open and transparent as much as possible, and we are very happy that we have a good partners among stakeholders in the Czech Republic for such discussions. And we are also very happy that we are together able to discuss with all of you from other member states many topics. It was also in the topic of artificial intelligence. Now it's DSA, and I believe that we will have similar discussions on another regulation that is coming. For example, what we are now watching very closely is Data Governance Act that is very fresh, and the debate on data will be definitely part of very I would say core discussion on the future of digital economy too. But today we speak about DSA, and I'm very happy that we are here in such a representative team. Also, not only Milena as Vice President of Confederation Industry and Jaroslav Zajíček as ambassador at our permanent representation, but we will have also greetings from the Commissioner or Vice President of the Commission, Věra Jourová. So it's a great combination of people, also including all our audience for such discussion. I would like to say a few words from the position of the Czech Republic. Maybe you don't know that the Czech Republic has one of the highest numbers of online stores, of e-shops per capita in Europe, also in the world actually. And Czech Republic is one of the most growing e-commerce markets. So that's definitely one of the reasons why we are very much interested in this digital economy topics, and we were very happy to have discussion with all of you today. So digital services are always one of the very important priorities in the digital agenda for us. And when it comes to especially to DSA, as is also valid for some other regulations, we pay a great attention to it because of the upcoming Czech presidency of the EU in the second half of 2022. So we think that there will be a lot of work for us. So of course with permanent representation and many others in the second half of 2022, because many legislative initiatives that are being started now will culminate by the time. So we try to be also prepared for that, and to have the discussions already now to have a feeling for fine-tuning the regulation during our presidency. What else we can say is that we unfortunately this year is very much affected by the COVID-19 situation. On the other hand, we can see that this pandemic situation has has initiated lots of social distancing. That's the bad thing, all the lockdowns and so on. But on the other hand, it has actually ramp up online shopping, social media use, increased internet telephony and streaming of videos and movies and so on and so on. This conference is clear evidence of being online everywhere where it's possible. So it has resulted in spikes in business to consumer sales, and an increase in business to business e-commerce. And all of these aspects show the importance of digital services. On the other hand, we are also witnessing that the increase of negative phenomena like spread of disinformation, and we have to say that digital service, the increased usage of digital services increases also these negative effects, especially, for example, as I mentioned, this is disinformation, and we need to combat them. And so I'm very happy that we have also the greetings from Věra Jourová here today, because it's also a little bit, not a little bit, but quite a lot, topic of her in her position of Vice President of the Commission, and this topic is more and more important in this era. For the Czech Republic, it's an absolute priority to support the digital transition, as we see it as a strong driver of economic recovery, but also a unique opportunity to strengthen the single market. So also from these reasons, we actively follow the steps of European Commission in the revision of the e-commerce directive. And of course, the e-commerce directive is already 20 years old, and probably some update is needed. But as my predecessors have already said, actually, we think that on the other hand, e-commerce 20 years ago was very visionary regulation or directive, and actually it proved to be working. So on the other hand, we don't think that all the good basis of regulation of e-commerce in the EU that was created by e-commerce directive should be dismantled and built again on the greenfield. So we think that the right word is rather evolution, not a revolution. We also have to say that we currently don't have official national position on DSA and also DMA and other initiatives, because there's quite a lot of new initiatives now. So the new competition tool can be added and so on. I already mentioned Data Governance Act, where the publication was already done, but the DSA and DMA were not, so we cannot have official national position, and we are very much looking forward to December 15th on what will be published. Generally, we can say that from the perspective of the Czech Republic, we do believe that the primary focus should be on horizontal rules for cross-border provision of services. And as I said, we don't think that the basic principles of e-commerce directive should be somehow put in question, but rather we should continue on these principles also in DSA. We are very active in discussions on DSA from the beginning. I'm very happy that that we have a quite well working group of so-called D9+ states, and many of you definitely have noticed the D9+ non-paper published actually more or less 1 year ago, many months ago, that was actually saying that these states agree on the main or the approach to the DSA that should lie in actually keeping the core principles of the e-commerce directive untouched as much as possible. So the Czech Republic fully supports that approach, as I have already said. And just to name the main principles that we speak about, it's a principle of no general obligation for providers to monitor information. Then, as it was also mentioned before, it's a country of origin principle, but also the exemption for intermediaries from liability for the content they store. So we truly appreciate the cooperation of the nine plus countries in this area. And we also, as I have already said in the beginning, try to work on the national level with all the stakeholders. So this is not just position of the Ministry of Industry; it's a position of the 9+ countries. It's a position that was discussed with the stakeholders on the national level. I'm very happy that in cooperation with Confederation of Industry and in some cases also with other partners, but mainly Confederation of Industry, we have organized a series of workshops on DSA related matters, and we know we have already quite robust opinion on how to approach the areas that will be most likely proposed in DSA. So just to repeat. The few most important: the freedom of establishment, the country of origin principle, the liability regime, or no general monitoring obligation. These are the pillars that we see as I would say cornerstones of DSA preparation. So we think that keeping these principles we can help, and working with them in DSA is a good way how to create the most favorable conditions for the completion of EU digital single market and thus enable full development of digital services in e-commerce. As the e-commerce directive was truly a breakthrough step towards the creation of functioning digital single market. So DSA should work on this good practice and to fine-tune the digital single market. To conclude, two main goals that we will watch and we will support and speak about in legislative process related to DSA are that we should build on experience with the e-commerce directive and preserve its core principles. And the second one is that we always, as we always repeat in all the regulations, but it's very much valid here, is that we should definitely refrain from snowballing of too many issues, and we should definitely avoid over-regulation. This will help us here to keep the DSA a compact horizontal enabler of cross-border provision of digital services, as it was said also by Jaroslav Zajíček in previous contribution. So these two main areas we should have in mind, or we will have in mind in our position, and we will be very happy to discuss it with you today. To conclude, I have to say that we are very much looking forward. We are very curious what will be published on 15th of December on DSA, and also we are looking forward to DMA. And after that, we will be very happy to organize another round of stakeholder discussions, also like more broad, also with all of you from also other member states. And we will be very happy to prepare the robust positions that will help to create to utilize the opportunity of DSA to create a really strong digital single single market, and the European single market is now de facto the digital single market. So this is in the same boat. It's actually the creating the strong digital single market means to help to quick and strong recovery of European economy. So thank you very much again for this opportunity. I wish you a very fruitful conference and fruitful discussions, and we're very curious to see also outcomes of this conference, and definitely we'll try the main outcomes to somehow reflect in preparation of our position. Thank you.
Thank you, Petr. Thank you, Deputy Minister. We cannot agree more with the principles you just spelled out, and also thank you for active involvement in D9 plus coalition of digital savvy and digital forward-looking countries. This is very important, and we are so glad that there has been forming common position to those key portfolios. And now, as you already informed our audience, the Vice President of the European Commission for Value and Transparency couldn't be here today with us, but she sends us her video message, and let's listen to her what she has to say to DSA from her stance and point of view and portfolio.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me first start by thanking you for organizing this debate. The EU Digital Services Act will indeed be an essential initiative for the online world, but not the only one. Many of the challenges the European Union is facing today are amplified by the digitalization of our societies. We must respond to this in a truly European way, in full respect of our fundamental values and principles. This is the approach of the European Commission. We are determining our digital soul. Last week, we have adopted the European Democracy Action Plan. Soon we will adopt the Digital Services Act and other initiatives. They will shape our information and communication space for many years to come. I am pleased to see the big interest of the Czech government and other stakeholders for the digital framework. Also, because it is possible that many of them, including the Digital Services Act, will still be discussed under the Czech presidency of the Council in 2022. Let me now briefly introduce the main ideas behind the Commission's proposals. The Digital Services Act package seeks to regulate activities of platforms that have become major players in the digital economy, the so-called gatekeepers, whose role poses challenges for our economies, societies and democracies, among others. The DSA will also update the existing framework for digital services, the current e-commerce directive. We need to ensure a fair, competitive and innovative digital economy. We would also like to ensure a level playing field for all businesses in Europe. We want to see them innovate, grow and compete, whilst also guaranteeing user safety and the fundamental rights of European citizens, in particular their freedom of expression. Our ambition is also to make it easier for businesses to operate across the EU. European companies, and especially our small and medium enterprises, should fully benefit from our borderless single market. To achieve this, online platforms such as social media and online marketplaces will have clearly defined responsibilities, seen through the perspective of risks for the single market, but also wider for the society. Together with the Digital Services Act, the Commission will also adopt the Digital Markets Act. The aim is to ensure a competitive and fair digital single market, a market for everyone, not only the few giants. Both the DSA and the DMA will bring important generic rules for digital services. But the world going online has more than just economic impact. It also creates challenges for our democracy. The freshly adopted European Democracy Action Plan brings measures and ideas to address those challenges. We want to make online campaigning and information space a fair game for everyone. And we want to be better equipped to fight disinformation. Let me stress, fight, not delete content. While we need better general rules on transparency and accountability of online platforms, our work on disinformation will be more nuanced and targeted. That is why one of the actions we proposed in the plan is the upgrade of the so-called Code of Practice Against Disinformation. We need a new anti-disinformation pact with platforms, advertisers, websites, and the civil society to improve accountability of algorithms, to stop allowing platforms and websites making money on disinformation, to design better ways to deal with manipulation through bots or with the use of fake accounts. We will set up a system of monitoring to increase public scrutiny, as the platforms cannot police themselves alone. But let me stress one important thing. We will not regulate on removal of disputed content. We do not want to create a ministry of truth. We need to find the right balance between the freedom of speech and the need to protect our society against harmful content. Ladies and gentlemen, the EU is coming with very important rules for the digital sphere, and we target nothing less than setting global standards. We are the ones who must come with the answer to the complex digital challenges based on our values and principles. I trust to be able to count on your support in this regard, and I wish you a fruitful discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your video message. We are proud of you because cultivating democracy nowadays, it's no easy task. And of course, we are prepared to be involved in the debate. And we are aware also in business that without rule of law and democracy and transparency and trust, business will not thrive. So thanks again. Now we are moving closely to our panel discussion. I would like to introduce Professor Radim Polčák, who is Vice Dean and one of the greatest expert on digital law. He will moderate the discussion, but before I will ask him to take the floor and start with this task, I would like to remind all people in the audience that if you would like to pose any question, please, you have the opportunity also use the chat. So Radim, floor is yours.
Good morning, thank you. We will have a panel discussion that will focus on some of the aspects of what is now being prepared by the European Commission under the title DSA, and what the Vice President Jourova mentioned in her talk. And we will not speak about the general meanings of those basic principles. It is undisputed that these should be included in the debate and then in the legislation. But always it is important to speak about the detail. And I'm glad that the Commission takes here the pragmatic approach, because the DSA will form the basis of the whole information society across the common market. And as it was the case with the e-commerce directive. And it is always important to try to envisage what the actual effect will be. And it is then essentially important not to debate it only among the political powers, among the lawmakers or the executive, but also to include the industry into the debate. And I'm very happy that the Confederation of Industry put together this panel and represents exactly this pragmatic approach. So in the panel, we will have Vice President of the European Parliament, Mr. Marcel Kolaja. He will start with his note in a minute. Then we have here the Legal and Policy Officer of the European Commission, Mrs. Eva Jordan Vaňková. Then we have the Counselor for Cyber Policy and Digitization of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark, Mr. Jinju Wang. And we have also the Digital Policy Officer of Svensk Näringsliv, the Swedish enterprise. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the Swedish name. My Swedish is not entirely fluent. Mrs. Karola Ekblad. And then we will have the EU Policy Director of Wikimedia, Mr. Dimitrov. The first statement will be delivered by Vice President of the European Parliament, Mr. Marcel Kolaja. So, Mr. Kolaja, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the floor, and also big thanks to the organizers for organizing this very important and timely event. In my introductory speech that I will try to keep as short as possible so that we have as much time as possible for the questions from the audience, I would like to address first what are the principles of the e-commerce directive that should be preserved, which in my opinion is the country of origin principle. It's the no general monitoring obligation rule, so that member states cannot oblige platforms to do general monitoring of content of their users, and it is also the exemption from liability for hosting service providers. I am receiving some weird echo. I'm not sure if anything can be done about that. On the other hand, what should be reviewed or updated is the lack of having a clear framework for notice and action system. So there should be clear notice and action rules. There should be a complaint and redress mechanism, and we should also update transparency obligations so that we know how algorithms work, so that we know how content is being taken down, to what extent is being taken down, how the decisions are being made, and what is the reason for taking the part. Now, I would also like to say that transparency is one of the areas where really we really need to focus to understand how the whole procedure works, and we will also need that information to know that fundamental rights are protected, which is very important for me, which is very important for my political group, that not only the content that is illegal offline is also illegal online, which is a principle that many politicians repeat these days, but also that the content that is legal online is apparently also that is legal offline is apparently also legal online, and for that we need to have clear rules to safeguard fundamental rights. We need to have clear mechanisms how those who provide content, users, citizens who upload some content, can defend themselves if their content is mistakenly taken down. With that, I would just finish with saying that we should focus on illegal content. We have heard the Vice President of the Commission, Jourova, speaking also about harmful content. I believe that the area of harmful content is very complex. We cannot, even if we speak about disinformation, there is so many types of disinformation. And we need to look into all these categories one by one, basically. One of the most crucial ones when it becomes to the negative impact on our society is, of course, political disinformation and foreign interference in election process, for instance. But that's apparently a completely different type of disinformation than, for instance, if we're speaking about whether one particular product is effective in this and that area, and we should definitely treat them differently. And we need to make sure again that even opinions that are maybe not popular can be heard. And with that, I stop and pass the floor back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You outline a number of issues that we will get back in the discussion. And I think that you quite precisely named those problematic areas, like the country of origin, like non-general monitoring obligations. And there's always like some problematic part on it. With no general monitoring obligations, the question is, what does it mean? General, of course. So we will definitely continue with these topics later in the discussion after the opening statements. And I have to say that the European Parliament did a great thing this summer when it published the compendium on the topic of the liability of digital service providers. And it is actually so good that we started using it on my institute as a textbook. So this gives quite good prospect for the level of knowledge that the European Parliament holds at the moment regarding this issue. Now, the second impulse statement will be presented by the Legal and Policy Officer of the European Commission, Eva Jordan Vaňková. And because there are so strict measures around the draft of the DSA, she is not going to tell us what is written in there, in the words of the text, but I hope that we will get some more insight into it despite of these strict and harsh security measures. So, Mrs. Jordan Vaňková, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, and thank you. Many thanks also for inviting me and for this timely debate. Indeed, the proposals are to be published next week, and so as was made publicly, we in the Commission believes that you will receive quite a nice Christmas gift, but not that much work for your Christmas. I was given a question and 3 minutes to respond to the question how the liability regime should be updated for the current century. So I will try to respond to this question briefly, and then we can follow up on that in the discussion, certainly. I very much agree, and what I would highlight to respond to this question is that indeed the e-commerce directive is very much timeless, and the principles it contains indeed lasted very well for 20 years. And we firmly believe that the main principles like country of origin, liability regime, or no general monitoring no general obligation to monitor should be kept also for the future decades. And it's very convenient to hear from all the speakers that spoke so far that there is indeed a broad convergence of opinions on these broad lines on the DSA. But as you might know, at the very beginning of this mandate of the Commission, we received a political guidance that is binding for us. So to keep the main principles that I just mentioned, but also at the same time to update them and modernize them. And this you can translate into a thorough analysis of the main principles of the e-commerce directive, and speaking about liability regime, to look at the 3 categories that are currently covered by the liability framework and to see whether these are indeed valid or there needs to be some clarification, update, or what is the way forward. So with this, we opened the public consultation this summer, and we received more than 3,000 of replies. Indeed, the citizens, but also the businesses, took over their possibility to shape the framework for the new decades to come. And speaking about liability, I would summarize the replies in 2 main lines. The first, as was already said, that indeed the liability regime should avoid one-size-all-fits approach, that indeed all service providers has its own specificities, so this might be adapted in the DSA. But at the same time, as I already mentioned, that the liability regime should be very much kept, but some aspects are to be clarified or updated. And this has indeed driven our work over the past months, together with the co-legislators' works. The EP produced 3 reports to legislative and non-legislative. The member states started formulating their opinions, but at the same time we had to look, of course, at the harmonization and level of harmonization at the EU level among the member states, a development of new business models, as well as relevant core decisions. And all these elements we took into consideration. And so what I firmly believe you can expect in the proposal next week is a well-balanced solution that is tailored according to the type of service provider, but at the same time it's graduating along their societal impact. At the same time, the solution that we propose is reasonably proportionate, but it also responds to the calls from the largest online companies to enhance and clarify their responsibilities. And this all should be supported by a precise mechanism of cooperation among the member states. So in case of a disagreement, there is a clear mechanism how to proceed. So this is in a nutshell my response to the question I was given, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much. The scalability is definitely an important issue. And one question is also, of course, the size and importance of the providers. The other question is the rights that are protected by various tools. And next opening note will be delivered by Mr. Jinju Wang, who is the Counselor for Cyber Policy and Digitization of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark. So, Mr. Jinju Wang, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It has been a great pleasure to participate and be invited to participate in this webinar. I can very much sign up to also what was mentioned in the introductory remarks, and also say we've been very happy to have a very constructive cooperation with the Czech Republic in the 9+ group, which Denmark is also a member of. And we find it is time to modernize the legal framework for digital services and create a responsible digital environment with increased consumer trust. The overarching aim must be, as also mentioned by previous speakers, to preserve and strengthen the central market for digital services and ensure that European companies, consumers, and society can continue to benefit from the opportunities given by digital services. Regarding liability, there are no doubt that the cornerstones in the current regulatory reform, such as the country of origin, the intermediary liability, have been essential for the development of the digital single market and a flourishing platform for economy. These principles, as also mentioned, should be preserved and maintained, though in a modernized form. From our side, we have considered, and we believe there is a need to update the liability exemption in order to create a responsible platform economy. There is a need to give platforms and incentives to proactively combat illegal content. This should be done by introducing what we call a duty of care requirement. Digital platforms should only be covered by the liability exemption as long as they are taking measures that could reasonably be expected from them to proactively detect and remove illegal content on their services. Well, what constitutes sufficient measures taken by platforms would depend on the size, ability, and business model of the digital platform in question. As part of a duty of care, online marketplaces should be required to make an effort to verify the information and identity of its business partners by introducing a Know Your Business Partner principle in order to address challenges with non-compliant products from especially digital platforms established in third countries. In general, we find that an introduction of such a principle will result in both increasing consumer and user trust when buying products on e-commerce platforms or interacting on social media. Further, we find that the notice and take down procedures should be harmonized. We believe an important tool to ensure time take down of illegal content would be to introduce time limits. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think the issue of incentives is absolutely essential. I have my son, and he's now 8 years old, and I learned a great deal about incentivizing throughout these 8 years. I would just like to remind the audience that you can send questions or comments to the panelists that we can get to after we finish with the round of the impulse statement. So please feel free to put the questions and we will try to answer them if we can. Now, next speaker with the opening note will be Mrs. Carola Ekblad, who is responsible for digital policy at the Svenskt Näringsliv, the Swedish enterprise. So, Mrs. Ekblad, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, and thank you for organizing this very important event, and thank you for the floor. And the Confederation of Swedish Enterprises represents 60,000 individual companies, mostly small and medium enterprises. And actually our position is very much in line with the D9 non-paper mentioned several times before. Sweden is one of the members of that group of member states. Many of our member companies are actually heading more and more to become a digital platform. And most, if not all of our members, depend on one or several digital service providers in their daily businesses. So when updating the liability regime, the goal must be to create a functioning and secure internal market with room for new technology and new business models. The digital economy is developing rapidly. And we are thus calling on the regulator to be cautious. We cannot solve everything at once. Bad actors seek to exploit online systems, and it is in our common interest to prevent them from doing that. Although we all have a pretty good and, I believe, common sense of what we wish to fix, the digital services will and must adapt, and it is not easy to know what we get instead. The regulator must only regulate where it could be confident with the consequences. Any revision of the e-commerce directive should ensure broad harmonization, maximum certainty for businesses, a level playing field for all, and effective enforcement, including those companies outside the EU offering their services in the single market. As we have heard, and we all agree, I believe, that the core principles of the e-commerce directive, that is the country of the origin principle, the exemption for intermediaries from liability for the content they store if they fulfill certain conditions, and the no general obligation for providers to monitor information, nor a general obligation for them to actively seek facts or circumstances indicating illegal activity. Those principles, we agree, should be maintained. What is important with the DSA, it is to harmonize the notice and takedown procedures in order to provide more legal certainty and to prevent fragmentation on the internal market. We believe it is time to introduce a framework for notice and action mechanisms across the EU. My last point to cover during this 3 minutes introduction is that the legislator should aim for a legal framework that encourages digital service providers to take voluntary measures tackling problematic content, products, or conduct without being penalized for their good faith efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the issue of certainty also is extremely important. And now we have the situation when the legal regulatory framework was founded on the grounds of the e-commerce directive, but then we have the case law of the Court of Justice and of the member states. So the stability in this sense is absolutely essential. And yes, the DSA will affect pretty much all the information society and all the business that is around it. The question of Good Samaritan provisions is also quite vibrant, and I think that we'll get back to it in our discussion. And maybe it will be also noted by our next speaker, who is Mr. Dimitrov, the EU Policy Director of Wikimedia, which is a foundation that is famous for knowing everything. So, Mr. Dimitrov, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello, good day. Thanks for having me, and hello to all the other speakers. I want to start by maybe taking a few steps back and just comment that looking at the discussion about moderating content online over the past years, it seems to me like we're perhaps a little bit too much talking about regulating a shopping or trade center here. To us at Wikimedia, the internet is more than that. It is a public space, much like a street or a park or a square. Sure, that includes shops and stalls and vendors, but it probably also includes playgrounds and stages and collaboratives. So I feel like we need to look at it from both sides, and moderating such places is not easy. It cannot be black and white. There are no simplistic solutions here. Take the Good Samaritan or duty of care principles that we heard about just now, for example. Yes, they sure incentivize services that try to be a safe space and to do things right. But to us, they also somewhat one-sidedly incentivize removal of content. And this is where we say for any such incentive, we need a counter incentive to not remove too much content, to not remove legal content. Otherwise, we risk losing a balance here. And just as in real life, this balance is hard to strike in public spaces. And we say that governments and businesses won't be able to do it alone. They won't be able to use technology as a sort of magic potion to get that balance right. So they'll need to rely on responsible people and on constructive communities. So basically on what we call civil society, and a responsible online civil society for us, in order to work with businesses and with government to ensure that we can get things right, that we can get hatred and vandalism off our streets, but also off our online spaces, we'll need several things. Firstly, we would need our fundamental rights and freedoms to be protected in a balanced way across services and platforms. We cannot continue to let them be overridden by terms of services or self-regulatory or voluntary shortcuts. There can be no general monitoring in what way ever. And we need basically these terms of services that respect human rights standards to be independently audited and enforced. Secondly, we really need to think about including communities in the moderation of online spaces. This means that there should be human and community oversight over the process. There should be clear notice and action rules. There should be inclusive processes. There should be redress and collective redress mechanisms. And platforms should give reasons for decisions taken on blocking and deleting. Everything should be transparent in that decision-making process, including automated mechanisms. Thirdly, but of course not lastly, since we're sticking to a three-point format here, we need to, as communities, to have a real choice in switching between those places, those services and platforms. Just as in real life, if one provider doesn't suit me, I can easily take my phone number to the next one. We do not have this ability online. We're quickly continuing to lose it. To remedy this, we need real interoperability and portability mechanisms. And that's the bottom line. We need to continue to envision the internet as a network public space where people can connect, can trade, can make business, but can also safely take decisions together.
Thank you very much. But regarding this transparency, that is actually key to many things online. The problem is that with automated algorithms and with these autonomous algorithms and artificial intelligence, we hit the wall of explainability, and that makes it all way more difficult. But definitely, we can get to these issues later in discussion. Looking at the comments, I will ask my question first to use the privilege of being the chair of this session. And I would like to turn to Mr. Kolaja with the issue of European businesses. And we have not been very successful so far with building the information society on the grounds of European businesses. We have here some global players, but only very few or nearly none of them is based in the European Union. So the question is, if there is a way how we can change it within the framework or within the envisaged framework of the DSA.
Thank you for the question. Yes, even though I would say it's maybe more the DMA than the DSA, but still part of the same package. With the already mentioned interoperability obligations, because what we have been observing over the course of the past years is that there are platforms now that build de facto monopolies in certain areas. And these platforms work as very closed ecosystems where users are very often kept locked in. Imagine that you are a user of one of these big platforms. Not necessarily you are a user of such a platform because it's the best platform out there, but naturally because your friends are there. You want to stay in touch with your friends on social networks. You want to stay in touch with your friends on chat systems. And therefore, I believe that we should introduce interoperability obligations where we see these market failures and oblige these large platforms to allow smaller platforms to interconnect with them, so that users of other platforms will be able to stay in touch with their friends, with their business partners on other platforms. Imagine it as an email, for instance. In email, even though I can have a different mail server, and I certainly have a different mail server than you are, we still can exchange emails. With platforms like Facebook, I cannot exchange Facebook Messenger messages with you unless I have an account on Facebook. And we should build an environment where we allow European startups, where we allow community-based projects to grow. And for that, we need these monopolies to provide to provide an API or provide ways in layman terms to provide ways how others can interconnect so that people can stay in touch with each other regardless of which platforms they are users of.
Thank you. But do you think this is doable? Because the market dominance and establishing market dominance is one of key features of those businesses and one of key features of their business models. And we already had that attempt in the GDPR because there is the transfer option, or there is the transfer right. And we do not see much of transfer really going on. So do you think that this is realistic? It is a very bold call, but then the question is whether it is doable, because I can imagine that the opposition of the industry will be extreme on this aspect.
Well, technically it's doable for sure. Politically, it's doable depending on to what extent legislators will follow what is good for the citizens, or to what extent they will become lobbied by maybe some of these corporations who might lobby them for going the other direction. I don't want to presume to be clear, and I am not and I am not also saying that any of these corporations will do that, but if that happens, it really depends on the legislators in the end, not on the companies. That needs to be made clear. When it comes to GDPR and the principle that is built in there, that you can take your data and carry it over to another provider, that's a very nice thing, of course. But that brings us to the beginning of what I said on this topic, which is, yeah, sure, you can take your data and transfer it elsewhere, but where do you go if your friends are not there, if your business partners are not there, and basically you have you have a very limited set of people that that you can communicate there. You still need to stay in touch with the people on the platform that you would like to leave. And for that, we would need these interoperability obligations so that even if you leave the platform, you can still stay in touch with the people on that platform.
Thank you. And the dependence is on both sides, because when we have the contracting platforms, transportation platforms, then we already have judgments from across Europe that the level of dependence of those providers is very close to the dependence that we have on our employers. So then definitely this is a big thing. Good. Another issue that was mentioned in those opening notes is the collaboration between the member states. And so far we had a directive, and sometimes we saw that the ways in which it was implemented into the laws of the member states and into the actual legal practice differed, which of course is definitely not good for creating this certain and predictable environment throughout the common market. It was also mentioned here. And so the question is like how this cooperation between the member states should be established, and how it should be institutionally backed, or what is the institutional setup that is envisaged. As far as we can say from the drafts that we don't have. So this question would go after Mrs. Jordan-Vaňková.
Many thanks for this important question. Reply to this question is also tied to what was said by keynote speakers and my co-panelists. That the DSA should remain a horizontal tool. And so, as I mentioned, that, and also the others, that the main principles of the e-commerce directive should be kept. The DSA is indeed building on the e-commerce directive. So in this regard, these two tools should be perceived as inseparable. And so we are preparing the DSA as an internal market tool. And this is important to have in mind when we speak about the cooperation among the member states for the future decades, that any future setup should help improve functioning of the internal market for mostly small and medium enterprises. This has been mostly the victims of disharmonized market that we can see today partly. And so what we receive not only from the public consultation, but also from the European Parliament's reports and also from the stakeholders in general. And we see it that sometimes the cooperation among the member states lacks clear rules. In case the illegal content is this content is illegal in one member state, it may not be legally in another member state. So for this, we think that we need clearer rules, so the member states exactly know how to cooperate in case this happens. And we also received calls that this enhanced cooperation among the member states should be supported by EU level. So we considered well how the EU level can support cooperation among the member states. And so what we will propose is kind of something what I would call hybrid structure. So some co-legislators were quite strict about their calls about the new agency, which are sometimes not so popular. So we needed to find a balance among the functioning solution and what we will asked for, I would say.
I think, thank you. I think it will go down to what Vice President Jourova mentioned. There's probably no will to create a ministry of truth that will be harmonizing truth across the common market. But before I give the floor to Mr. Jinju Wang, just a quick question back. Do you think that there is a space for a regulator or for regulators in the member states in this field? Because we haven't had them so far. The e-commerce directive also has some kind of institutional backing, some kind of institutional structure, but it is not very visible, and in real life, it is not overly functioning. So do you think that there is a need to step up and to create like a true regulator, true executive regulator?
No, this is, yeah, indeed, very much true. I fully agree. And what we took carefully into consideration is that at the moment, there is basically no structure, no EU regulator for 20 years. And the cooperation somehow worked. But we have seen mostly in past years that there has been some disagreement among the member states. So we think that we cannot go from zero level to fully fledged regulator. And indeed, this what you mentioned as Ministry of Truth. I'm sure that it will come back to us during the negotiation many times. So this is not something that we would like to have. Indeed, what we want is to have the real cooperation among the member states. The core role should be still given to the country of origin, but there needs to be clear rules in case another member state has some, let's say, fears, uncertainties. So they need to know how to cooperate. And in case it does not work, there needs to be a role given to EU level to help them to cooperate and find a solution.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Now I will ask for a comment, Mr. Jinju Wang.
Thank you very much, and I'm actually very encouraged by what Commission just said. We find also from experience it's very important to ensure an effective enforcement of the common rules in the DSA. It is necessary to set up a new enforcement cooperation mechanism between member states authorities. Such a mechanism could establish clear procedures for the cooperation by, amongst others, introducing fixed time limits for competent authorities in the country of origin to respond to requesting authorities from other member states. These are some of the issues that we have stumbled across over the years as an issue. Further, we've also find it a special procedure should be established whereby the Commission is given a central role in coordinating the investigation of and actions against digital services that operate across borders. Basically because these are something that should somehow be taken care of on a community level. The special procedure should enable a legal case to be made against a service based on its infringements of human laws incurred in various member states.
Thank you. But do you think that the level of public administration is appropriate, or should it be more with the courts? Because there always should be court review when rights are at stake. Of course, it's much slower and everything has to be more elaborate, etc. But that's another field where we are discussing about illegal content or illegal activities and the liability and the different ways in which the providers are liable. So don't you think that it should be more elevated to the level of the courts rather than leaving it at the public administration?
I think much can be achieved by having a much better and regulated cooperation among member state authorities. This is one of the things that we have pushed forward also in our public consultation replies to the Commission, that we ensures that there are some ground rules for cooperation so that issues can be solved respecting the country of origin principle. But we also fully admit and recognize that there are some cases where we need to have the Commission much more actively involved, especially when we're talking about cross-border issues, and that's also why it will be quite interesting to see how the upcoming legislative proposal, how it will deal with those kind of challenges.
Thank you. I think here one of the challenges is that if we look at private law liability, then this is not harmonized across the member states. It has been a matter of many comparative studies, and it was also debated back in the days when the e-commerce directive was being drafted. So if there is a case for harmonizing the liability across the member states, and that's a very sensitive thing because it is embedded into the civil codes that form basis of legal systems across Europe. So I think that is also quite challenging if we speak about harmonizing the common market. But I would like to ask, on the note of the institutional backing and of administrative regulation, I would like to ask for a comment, Mr. Dimitrov, because this seems to go a bit like contrary to what he said in his opening note, if I was correct, because you said, do not regulate us, leave it primarily to the community. Am I right?
Well, no, I do think we need very clear rules. I do think we need clear, ideally continental rules, and then, well, even global rules, because the one issue we're having is we might not be a business, but we still operate Wikipedia, which is one of the very large platforms out there. And over the past decade, I've asked literally over 100 lawyers which law applies to Wikipedia. It's a very simple question. You know, I want to run this encyclopedia. Which law should I respect? No one can give you a straightforward answer. And then I've asked the Commission this, I've asked national governments and administration this, and nobody knows. Which for us, of course, is a problem because, I don't know, I'm in the Czech Republic, I take a picture and I want to put it on the German language Wikipedia, which is then hosted in the US currently with a co-host in Amsterdam. So which law do I apply? And we don't know, and this is a huge practical problem. So ideally for us, we would have sort of unified rules and laws. But we do believe that these unified rules and laws won't be just, well, let's put a duty of care on the platforms, and they need to show that they remove enough legal and illegal content, and then they're fine. No, we need these laws and regulations to respect fundamental rights and to give the people, to give, let's say, our online citizens the power to help create this safe and legal space. Because if we just try to do it top down, we'll never manage. And we do believe that a lot of these online services and platforms exist only because they have communities, only because they have all these people there. So including these people in the solution is the only way it can work in a democratic society. Otherwise, we'll just create, some rules that are applied from the top, and they might not be very well respected by the community. And we know from experience in real life that when some rules and laws don't involve the community and are not respected by the community and the population, that they usually don't work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I would like to ask for a quick comment, Mrs. Ekblad, because she represents a guild or an association of entrepreneurs that is so massive. I didn't know that you have so many members. So could you please comment on this, on the question of institutional backing and on the institutional setup?
Can you just repeat that question?
The question was whether there is a need for establishment of like specific authority that would first provide for harmonization of the application of the new DSA regime across the member states, and second would act as the authority that would provide for perhaps higher certainty in this field. So do we need a new office and do we need a new regulator?
We haven't discussed that too much in our position paper, but what I could say is we need clear notions for sure. We need clear definitions of what is being covered within the DSA, so that respective responsibilities are understood. I think that we could probably within the DSA stay with better cooperation between the member states. Not sure there is a need for an additional EU body regarding the DSA, maybe when it comes to the DMA, which we're not discussing in this event. But we haven't discussed it too much in our position paper. I'm sorry for not giving you a clear answer on this question.
Okay, and I think that this will evolve. It will probably not be any big bang, as Mrs. Jordan-Vankova mentioned. And I think that there is a question in the Q&A session that is closely related to what we just discussed, and also to what Mr. Dimitrov mentioned regarding the certainty as to the jurisdictional issues, like which law applies. And the question is whether there is any kind of one-stop shop planned for the illegal content removal, perhaps something what we know from the GDPR. So that question probably goes after Mrs. Jordan-Vankova. So you do not have to answer precisely, but do you think that there is a need for a one-stop shop solution when we speak about institutional backing?
This is indeed interestingly formulated question. We of course look at the other legislation in the field that regulates digital economy from the also mostly last mandate. Also at the legislation that you just mentioned. So as I mentioned, the core of the responsibilities to deal the illegal content should be still given to the country of origin. So if the intermediary is established in a certain member state, that member state should take over its responsibilities. But at the same time, if you are a citizen of another member state and you have some doubts about certain content, you also have to have a clear right to complain to your national authority, because that speaks of your language. So we think that you cannot be obliged to translate your request into another language, or that your request can take a couple of weeks to be solved, because sometimes these issues indeed needs to be tackled quickly. So the consumers still have trust in the online world, and they use the services safely and with trust. So I hope that this replies the question.
Sort of. Thank you. And the issue that is linked to it is also what then should be the redress mechanism. And so far we have experience with consumer alternative dispute resolution, or the online dispute resolution, which quite honestly is not very successful. There are not too many consumer disputes that are going through this process that is probably a bit too complicated to be used by regular consumers. So one-stop shop is one question. The other question is this redress mechanism or alternative resolution mechanism, both on the side of content removal and content like being kept. So is there anything envisaged in that sense? And it looks like we are questioning you on the content of the DSA, but we are discussing it. So I have to ask these questions.
But I'm sorry if I cannot be more concrete as you would wish. Indeed, there is still certain embargo on what I can say publicly. But speaking about the alternative dispute mechanism to solve disputes, this is already established in the e-commerce directive, and as I mentioned, this new tool will be inseparable from the current directive, and so we of course continue building on this tool. And I think that these both alternative and online dispute resolution are quite well established, not only for consumer issues, but also for some other fields of digital economy. So there is, I think, no doubt that it should have its place in the DSA proposal. That's for sure. But of course, each solution has its limits. So with this, I think we have to perceive also this type of solution.
Because we do have functioning systems of online dispute resolution, mostly implemented by the platforms, and they are highly efficient and very popular with the people. Thank you. Now, the next question, I'm looking into the comments section, and I don't know whether I got that question by Mr. Hederling correctly. It goes after the ways in which the rights holders can escape the liability, probably when they report like illegal content, and then they don't have rights regarding the content, or they do not have like a valid case to report. And I think that the most problematic issue in that sense is the copyrights. And this was broadly debated with the past legislation. And I also have to say that many of these position documents that were prepared by the European Commission, by the previous Commission, and also by this Commission, they start with the most serious cases of illegal content, like hate speech, like child pornography, etc. And then when we read through, then somewhere in the middle it starts speaking about copyrighted content, which is, of course, politically way more sensitive area. And I see Vice President Kolaja smiling, so he was probably within those fearful debates. And we are from agenda. So I would like to ask probably Mr. Kolaja to comment on this issue. Not because we have pirates in the parliament, but because he was in the debate.
Thank you. I apologize. I haven't heard like last 15 or 20 seconds of the question because of connectivity issues. But I think I got it. And my answer is I don't understand why rights holders who make false claims and report illegal content for copyright reasons, and it turns out that they actually don't have, they don't own the copyright for that particular content, why they should escape liability of their actions. I think, well, if that was the question, I'm not sure I understand it correctly, but I think that we actually need a very good mechanism in the notice and action framework, how to dispute dispute claims. But if, I mean, it's a very difficult debate at this moment, because we have the copyright directive. The Digital Services Act pretty much should not deal with copyright. It should rather deal with illegal content like hate speech, etc. But in general, we need a principle of how to deal with false claims, how to deal with it when someone flags a content and asks for it to be taken down in bad faith. These bad faith notices is something we definitely need to deal with. And I believe that also, and the discussions are still ongoing, and the discussions will, and the Commission kind of like will put more fuel into the fire of these discussions next week when the Commission introduces actually the legislation, right? But it still isn't figured out. It's part of the political debates, how to deal with all these things. But one of the issues that I'm looking at is we might maybe want to go into the direction where we treat manifestly illegal content, like already mentioned child sexual abuse material, for instance, in a different way than we deal with, let's say, allegedly illegal content. And I can imagine that in the first one, it might not be that difficult for the individual platforms to say, yeah, this content is illegal and we are taking it down. But for the latter, it might be very difficult sometimes for the platform to decide whether it's illegal or not. And we have heard already, from Wikimedia, that they already have a problem with different legal frameworks in different countries, and because they operate globally, the internet is a global thing. How they judge all these things, and sometimes I can imagine it's really, really difficult, and therefore I think we should also consider the concept that in these cases it would be actually competent authorities who would give the decision on whether illegal content should be taken down, or if it is not illegal content and can stay online.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think that there are two very important questions that you highlighted. One is the issue of proportionality, because when we have like very efficient mechanisms of content removal or of content handling, then if we speak about proportionality, then definitely it's different when we speak about removal of child pornography and removal of some political speech, where we have to guess whether it is legal or illegal, or it can be a matter of opinion, etc. And also copyrighted content is like having specific position in this proportionality debate. That's like obviously an issue that would be of consideration of like a constitutional court or even court of justice of the European Union if these matters go there. I have here a note by Mr. Henderlin, who was asking the question that was not the question, so we didn't get it correctly. And he said, the question related how it is planned to fix the misinterpretation of general monitoring obligation. I see. Okay, so the general monitoring obligation, now we already have extensive case law on mostly the term general. So what is general monitoring obligation? Maybe I will ask again Mr. Kolaja about his opinion, because this is extremely politically sensitive thing.
Yeah. I am not going to take it from the legal perspective, but I am going to take it from the political perspective. So therefore, what my opinion is on what this no general monitoring obligation principle should be, and in my opinion, we should have a legal framework that would make it clear that it is not possible to impose monitoring obligation on a platform, and that would amount even a court deciding and saying, look, dear platform, now you have to monitor the content, whether it this or that particular content appears, and you need to take it down, because speaking legally, and you are much better positioned, Mr. Polchak, than I am to judge on this from the legal perspective. But legally, my understanding is that there might be different interpretations of that, whether it's specific enough or whether it's general. But in my understanding, politically, this is something that we should not allow. And this I think also shows us that even though all of us agree on these three main principles of the e-commerce directive that we should not destroy, which is the country of origin, which is no general monitoring obligation, and which is the liability exemption, but we don't necessarily that easily agree on how it should be implemented, that we clarify our liability rules, we clarify our rules for operating online, and we stay in line with these three principles. Because I have also heard in one of the introductory speech, I think it was from Mr. Counselor, that the liability exemption should apply only in case the platforms employ proactive measures and detect illegal content. And that is politically what I cannot agree with, because first it raises privacy concerns. It would basically mean opening every particular conversation or content that is being uploaded on that platform and detecting whether it is illegal or not. Then it also raises issues how to protect the freedom of speech. We know that this can be done pretty much only in automated ways, unless it's a very small and tiny platform. And we also know that any kind of technologies automated this way are error prone. We have seen that on the largest platforms that have an enormous amount of money to develop and deploy these systems. And in the beginning of the pandemic, in the spring, Facebook falsely deleted many posts that were completely correct, that actually spread valuable information, and they removed it on the basis of that being disinformation. So we have this problem here. And last but not least, we would be privatizing law enforcement with this. And this is a principle that I cannot agree with. So again, we agree, all of us, most probably on these three cornerstones, but now it will be in the coming months, and I would even say years, to put everything into the legislation that we adopt, and that we find the ways through the political debate how to actually do this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I think that this debate goes hand in hand with the question of apparent illegality. And we had two cases at the European Court of Human Rights that doesn't apply to European law, but of course it is also the jurisdiction that is covering the European Union. And that was the Delphi and the MTE, where the size mattered in terms of these duties to find out about apparently illegal content. We have a comment here by Mr. or Mrs. Timonen, and it is, if I should summarize, it says, we need clarity, we need certainty, that's a good thing. We need country of origin, and we don't need new authorities. So That's a very clear comment. Now, one more question, if I may. We are running slightly over time, but I have to ask. If we compare the European regime with what they have in the United States, in the DMCA, in terms of reporting of illegal content, then the big difference is that in the States, the rights holders can report, while we do not have this limitation. We have it like opened for pretty much anybody to report, and that refers to what Mr. Kolaja said regarding copyrights, like reporting non-existing rights or the false reporting. Now, is there a reason to modify this and to allow for reporting or for notifying only those who hold the rights? Or will we keep, or are we likely to keep the situation that we have in our current European law, that pretty much anybody can report? That's my question probably to Mrs. Jordan Vaňková, and I would ask other panelists if they would like to comment later.
Thank you for this question. If the first part of the question was if the European law will, let's say, follow the US framework, I have to say that no, because in Europe, as mentioned, and it was also a cause from many speakers today and for many stakeholders, and submissions to the open public consultation we received, that the ECD should be kept horizontal. That means that it will still cover all types of illegal content that you mentioned. I'm sorry to hear that you have an impression that the copyright is mentioned somewhere in the middle, whilst the others are seems to be more prominent. The ECD will not differentiate amongst the types of content. We have the sectoral legislation, not only the copyright directive that was agreed rather recently and is still to be implemented, but we have also some other law that enables copyright holders to tackle or issue litigations in case of let's say, of fears, of uncertainty. So this will be, and this will remain applicable, and the DSA will provide broader framework to issue. And if you think about notice and action, for example, so this will be still applicable horizontally. So it will not provide any particular mechanism for any type of content.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Jinju Wang wanted to comment probably on the notifying question.
Yeah, I have several comments, but I will. It was actually triggered by a comment by Mr. Kolaja. We definitely want to have protected fundamental rights, just to make that sure. But our proposal for a duty of care is basically to ensure that the liability exemption not granted free of charge, but actually are granted in a way that you can see that they have done an effort to ensure that illegal content, I'm not talking about harmful content, but illegal content actually dealt with within the resources and proportional to the size of the platform. So that was more a comment to Mr. Kolaja.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Mr. Dimitrov wants to react, and then we will conclude.
Let me unmute myself. Well, just to say, because the issue of notice and action and takedown rules came, and the comparison to the US and the rest of the world. Just to give you a data from this year. So far we've received on Wikipedia and its sister projects 361 takedown requests for content, which is not a lot for such a big website, because our community does a lot of the job. But our legal department has received 361 takedown requests at large, outside of any rules, and we've granted exactly 0 of them. But when you look at the proper notice and action requests. So going over the DMCA law in the US, we've received 22 requests and granted 4. From our point of view, having a clear framework with clear rules how to ask for content takedown creates a lot less work for us, but a much higher efficiency rate for the people asking for content to be taken down.
Thank you. And there are already running automated systems on both sides, notifying and then taking the content down. I'm afraid that we ran already a bit overtime, but it was a great discussion, and I think that we pretty much covered the core of the upcoming legislation that will be of like enormous importance for the whole information society, because everything what we do on the internet is at some point mediated by some digital service. So we will look forward to seeing the Christmas gift, as it was named here by Mrs. Jordan Vankova, from the European Commission, and we will continue this discussion. And I think that this is what people say in the North. Let's continue this discussion, and it might easily happen that this discussion will continue throughout the next year, and maybe even into the times of the envisaged Czech presidency of the European Council. We will see how it will develop. Now I would like to hand over back to Mrs. Jaburkova, and I will ask her to conclude this conference. So one more thanks to the panelists, the Vice President of the European Parliament, Mr. Marcel Kolaja, the Legal and Policy Officer of the European Commission, Mrs. Jordan Vankova, the Counselor for Cyber Policy and Digitization of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark, Mr. Jinju Wang, Mrs. Carola Ekblad, the Digital Policy Officer at Svensk Näringsliv, Swedish Enterprise, and Mr. Dimit Dimitrov, the EU Policy Director of Wikimedia. Thank you, and yeah, let's go on. The floor is yours, Mrs. Jaburkova.
Thank you, and I will join you in my thanks to the panelists, to our keynote speakers, also to our audience for spending their time with us. I think that we can all agree that what we need is legal clarity and workable regulatory framework. It's a long path in front of us. But from the point of view of business, broad legislation, with complex legislation, with unclear scope and provisions will not only cost us time and money, but also maybe willingness to engage in digital business. And don't forget, life is tough in the light of ongoing pandemic and economic crisis. I also promise that Confederation of Czech Industry will be active, and I believe and looking forward that our paths will cross and we will continue the debate. I would like to again thank to the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Czech Permanent Representation, and also the team of Czech Confederation of Industry for great work making this debate happen. So wish you a great day and looking forward to seeing you soon.